The sky above was clear for the first time in days. The weather had been strangely calm, and the atmosphere filled with a strange stillness, as if the world itself was holding its breath. Everyone thought it was just another normal day. But they were wrong. The signal had come from Deep Space One that had taken scientists weeks to decrypt, a signal unlike any they had ever encountered, strange and foreign in its structure, far too advanced for anything humans could comprehend, but it was unmistakable, a message that carried with it an unspoken sense of danger. The United Nations scrambled to convene an emergency session. Leaders from every corner of the globe gathered in the hushed halls, ready to make sense of the unknown. The military came into play, immediately scrambling every available resource on standby to defend the Earth. But even with the world's finest minds working together, no one could have predicted what was coming next. Then it happened. A massive fleet of ships appeared without warning. The ships were unlike anything seen before, sleek and dark, almost organic in their design. They moved through space as if alive, each one towering above the clouds, casting enormous shadows over the cities of Earth. Their presence shook the foundations of the planet. On every screen across the globe, the image of the alien ships appeared. Their size was beyond comprehension. They blotted out the sun, casting an ominous shadow over the world. A message followed, though this time it was different. It was spoken, not written, and it echoed through every communication channel available. The voice was cold and calculated, its words chilling. "We claim your planet. Submit or face extinction." Fear gripped the hearts of humans as the world stared at the screens in disbelief. The first instinct of many was to run, to hide, but the majority were frozen, unable to react. Even those who had trained their whole lives for combat stood at a loss in the face of an enemy so overwhelming, so powerful, that it seemed impossible to challenge. But amid the panic there was a spark of something else, a realization that would fuel the resistance. A sense of purpose began to take root. Humans were not known for surrendering. They were not known for running from their problems. They faced adversity head-on, and they would do so again now. Across the globe, people began to stir. They were ready for something they never imagined they would have to face. They were ready for war. Maya Rodriguez stood at the front of a crowded room, her voice cutting through the thick air. Her words were simple yet powerful. This was not the time for fear. This was the time for action. We are human, and we do not yield. We will fight, we will adapt, and we will win. It wasn't just Maya's words that ignited the spark. It was the truth behind them. Humans had faced the impossible before. They had been the underdogs against overwhelming odds time and time again, and they had prevailed. Each victory built on the strength of their resolve, their ability to think differently and adapt faster than any enemy. With that, humanity's first strike began not with fancy weapons or advanced technology, but with the unrelenting force of human will. They would not be broken by fear. They would not bow to the Xylar invasion. They would fight back every step of the way, and in doing so they would show the invaders exactly what it meant to challenge humanity. The war had only just begun, but one thing was certain: the Xylar had made a grave mistake. They had underestimated humanity. The Xylar wasted no time. They struck first with brutal efficiency. The night sky exploded as the first wave of ships descended upon Earth, their weapons flashing like lightning, cutting through cities. In an instant, entire buildings crumbled into dust in the blink of an eye. Their technology was far beyond anything humans had ever seen. Their ships moved with precision, their weapons targeted with deadly accuracy. The first strike hit London, then New York, then Tokyo in rapid succession, leaving destruction in their wake. Panic swept across the world as people fled in every direction. The sound of sirens filled the air and chaos erupted in the streets as governments scrambled to respond. But there was no time to think, no time to regroup. The Xylar had taken the initiative, and humanity was left reeling from the shock of their sudden and overwhelming force. But it didn't take long for the human spirit to kick in. The survivors didn't panic, they didn't break, they fought back, not with advanced technology or overwhelming numbers, but with something that Xylar could never predict: human ingenuity and adaptability. Across the globe, the resistance began to form. Small pockets of resistance groups popped up in every city and town. The world's militaries went on high alert, organizing into a coordinated defense. Humanity's military forces may have been outgunned, but they had something far more valuable. They had the will to fight, and they had a deep understanding of their own weaknesses. Maya Rodriguez watched from her command center as reports flooded in from all over the world. Resistance groups were already using guerrilla tactics to slow the Xylar advance. Small but devastating attacks on supply lines and alien assets began to mount, making it clear that while the Xylar had the advantage of firepower, humans had the advantage of unpredictability. As the war escalated, the tide slowly began to shift. The humans knew they could not defeat the Xylar in direct combat, so they did what they did best. They adapted, they studied the enemy's weaknesses, and they exploited them. The first victory came when a small team of hackers managed to infiltrate the Xylar's communication network and feed them false intelligence, leading to the destruction of one of their key supply ships. The success of this mission was a turning point. It proved that the Xylar were not invincible, and humanity's ability to learn and innovate on the fly was not something the invaders had accounted for. Maya made the call for a larger-scale offensive. While the Xylar concentrated on their main targets, Earth's forces would strike from the shadows using guerrilla warfare and makeshift weapons to chip away at the alien invaders. In every corner of the planet, humans adapted to the new reality. They turned their cities into fortresses and their homes into bases of operation. What they lacked in technology, they made up for with creativity. Farmers turned their plows into makeshift tanks. Engineers began designing new weapons from scavenged alien tech, and scientists raced to reverse engineer the alien technology in hopes of finding a way to turn the tide. The world was far from ready, but humanity had a secret weapon. They had the ability to adapt to anything, to make the impossible possible. The Xylar had made the mistake of thinking they could crush humanity with brute force, but they had underestimated the one thing that no technology or weapon could ever overcome: human resilience. The war was far from over, but the first spark of hope had been lit. Humanity would fight back. They would fight back with everything they had. The Xylar were growing frustrated. Their initial confidence began to crack as the humans showed no sign of surrender. Their first assumption had been that humanity would crumble under the weight of their superior technology, but instead they were met with a resistance that they could not comprehend. The more they attacked, the more the humans adapted. The more they tried to break the will of the people, the more those people fought back. Kral, the Xylar commander, stood in his war room watching as the reports from Earth grew more and more concerning. What had started as a quick and easy conquest was turning into a drawn-out conflict, one that was costing them more and more. With each passing day, their fleet was taking hits, their resources were dwindling, and their soldiers were beginning to question their orders. They had underestimated the humans in every way. They had expected a species content with survival, but no fight in them. No will to win. They had expected Earth to be a prize for the taking, but they had not expected this kind of fight, this kind of fire in the hearts of the humans. Kral ordered a massive strike on several of the largest human strongholds, believing that a show of overwhelming force would finally break them. He ordered his ships to deploy their full arsenal on the cities below, hoping that the sheer devastation would break the spirit of the humans and leave them with no choice but to surrender. But humanity wasn't so easily defeated. Maya watched as the Xylar unleashed their attack. She saw the familiar patterns of destruction on the ground below, and knew they would not stop until they had wiped out every last trace of human resistance. The bombings were devastating, but they were not the end. They were simply a catalyst, a call to arms. Maya stood before the gathered leaders of the resistance and looked them in the eye. It was time for the next phase of their plan. She knew the humans would never win a direct war of attrition with the Xylar. Their technology was simply too advanced, so they would have to fight on their terms, their way, and they would have to use the Xylar's arrogance against them. They would hit the Xylar where it hurt the most, at the heart of their command structure. Maya had gathered a team of the best and brightest from every corner of the world: scientists, engineers, soldiers, and hackers, all brought together to infiltrate the Xylar's central command ship. Their mission was simple and incredibly dangerous: to plant a virus into the Xylar's communications network and disrupt their ability to coordinate their forces. It was a mission no one had believed possible, but Maya had faith in her team. She had seen what humans were capable of when they were pushed to the edge, and she knew they would rise to the challenge. The team boarded one of the hastily repaired alien warships and set off for the heart of the Xylar fleet. As they traveled through space, Maya's thoughts were focused on the enormity of the task ahead. They would be outnumbered, outgunned, and out of time. But the mission had to succeed because without it humanity's chances were slim to none. As the team prepared for their final approach, Maya knew one thing for sure: the humans would not give up. They would fight to the very end, and they would find a way to win. In the heart of the Xylar fleet, they prepared for the battle that would change the course of the war forever. They were the underdogs, but they were not afraid. They were humans, and that meant everything to them. They would do what no one expected, and they would take the fight directly to the enemy. The attack was underway. The small human team aboard their makeshift ship could feel the pressure mounting as they approached the heart of the Xylar fleet. The tension was palpable. Each second felt like an eternity. Their mission was nothing short of impossible. They were about to face a fleet capable of annihilating entire planets. But Maya knew there was no turning back now. It was do or die. They had no choice but to succeed. As the ship neared its target, the Xylar ships loomed large on every side, their sleek black silhouettes cutting through the darkness of space. The team was silent save for the hum of the ship's engines and the soft clicks of their fingers on keyboards, each of them fully aware that if they failed there would be no second chance. This was the moment. The fate of Earth hung in the balance. Maya stood at the front of the ship, staring out at the Xylar fleet. The sight of their massive ships was both awe-inspiring and terrifying. But she kept her focus. Her mind raced as she considered the odds. They were outnumbered heavily. Their ship was nothing more than a patchwork of human ingenuity and salvaged alien tech. It shouldn't even be flying yet. Here they were making their way toward the heart of the enemy's stronghold. The plan was simple in theory. They would infiltrate the Xylar command ship, disable its defenses, and upload a virus that would cripple their communications network. But there was one problem. The Xylar weren't fools. They knew that humans would try something like this, and their ship's defenses were stronger than anything they had encountered before. The virus had to be perfect. One mistake, and it would all fall apart. As they neared the command ship, Maya's team went to work. They bypassed the outer layers of security using the alien technology they had scavenged from previous battles. But every step forward felt like a gamble. The Xylar were getting suspicious, and the closer they got to their objective, the more likely they were to be detected. The tension was building. Every minute that passed made their mission riskier, but there was no room for hesitation. Inside the Xylar command ship, alarms began to blare as the humans infiltrated deeper into the heart of their defenses. Maya's team was quick, their movements precise. They knew they had to be fast. Every second counted as they navigated the labyrinthine corridors of the ship. But the Xylar were relentless, and as soon as the humans were discovered, the entire ship went into lockdown. The team fought their way through Xylar guards with nothing but their wits and the makeshift weapons they had fashioned from captured alien tech. The Xylar were powerful, but humans were quick and determined. They used the environment to their advantage, exploiting every weakness in the ship's design. Maya had no doubt that their success or failure would come down to the next few moments. They reached the central control room, the final hurdle in their mission. The virus had to be uploaded directly into the ship's core to spread through its entire system. Maya and her team fought off the last wave of Xylar resistance, and when the virus was finally in place, the command ship shook as the virus spread through its systems. One by one, the Xylar ships around them began to falter, their once unified coordination unraveling as the humans made their move. The tide of the war was about to change. The humans had struck a decisive blow. They had managed to disrupt the Xylar's communication and coordination systems, but the battle was far from over, and Maya knew they had only just begun. The chaos that followed the upload of the virus was immediate and overwhelming. The Xylar fleet began to falter. Their once synchronized movements became erratic and disorganized. Their ships that had previously attacked with deadly precision were now stumbling in the void, unable to coordinate their strikes. It was as though their once invincible force had become nothing more than a collection of isolated units struggling to communicate and function as a whole. Maya's team didn't waste a second. As soon as the virus took hold, they launched their final assault on the Xylar's central control room, and with a single strike destroyed their primary communications hub. This sent a ripple effect throughout the fleet. Their command chain was now in disarray, as the virus spread through their systems, disorienting their commanders and throwing their forces into disarray. From Earth, the human resistance saw the effect of their victory unfolding on the screens. The global leaders watched as the invaders seemed to stumble and retreat. They were no longer the all-powerful force they once were. Now they were on the defensive. The humans had managed to gain the upper hand. The hope that had seemed impossible just days before had become a reality. With the Xylar fleet in disarray, the humans took the initiative. Maya coordinated a massive counteroffensive using the chaos they had created to strike at the Xylar's key outposts and supply lines across Earth. Military forces launched coordinated attacks on alien positions, knowing that the invaders were now vulnerable. The attacks were fast and brutal. The element of surprise was on their side, and that Xylar were caught unprepared for the strength of the human resistance. Small bands of rebels working in unison from different parts of the world worked with military forces to take down alien weaponry and destroy critical infrastructure on Earth and across the globe. Each victory sparked more hope among the human population, and each alien defeat sent a ripple of fear through the Xylar ranks. Yet even as the tides seemed to shift in their favor, Maya knew this was just the beginning. The Xylar were not a species to back down easily. Their leadership would rally, they would adapt, they would find a way to recover from this blow, and they would come back with a vengeance. So while humanity celebrated its victories, they also knew that the war was far from over. Maya watched as the resistance forces took over more and more of the cities that had been under alien occupation for months. But it wasn't just about reclaiming territory. It was about sending a message to the Xylar, to the universe, that humanity could not be so easily defeated. It was about showing them the full force of human determination. And yet, even as humanity struck back, the Xylar didn't retreat entirely. They began regrouping their remaining forces and strategizing for their next move. Though they were disorganized, their will to conquer remained strong, and they would fight for their hold on Earth, no matter the cost. The stakes had never been higher as Earth's forces prepared for the next stage of the war. Maya stood at the front of the command center with her team, prepared for whatever would come next, because even though they had struck a significant blow, they knew the Xylar were far from finished, and the real battle was just beginning. The human forces knew they had only bought themselves time. The Xylar were far from beaten. They had suffered heavy losses, but they were not a species that easily yielded. Their retreat had been strategic, a chance to regroup and replan. And with every passing day, the Xylar were growing more desperate. Their pride would not allow them to back down, not when they were so close to completing their conquest of Earth. Maya sat at the heart of the human command center. The lights dimmed as she reviewed the latest intelligence. The war was entering a new phase, and she could feel the tension rising. The resistance had done well in pushing the Xylar back, but they were still outmatched. The Xylar had technology and firepower that humanity couldn't even dream of, but Maya also knew that humanity had something far more valuable: their determination, their adaptability, their ability to work together in the face of insurmountable odds. The Xylar may have been technologically superior, but they lacked what made humanity so formidable: the spirit to fight and never give up no matter the cost. Maya stood up from her seat and addressed the gathered officers and resistance leaders. This was the moment where they would either win or lose. They had to press forward and strike at the heart of the Xylar war machine. While it was still reeling from the earlier attack, they could not afford to wait for them to recover. Every human life lost had been a painful blow, but it had also been a lesson. They had learned to adapt, they had learned to overcome. And now it was time to take the fight directly to the Xylar once and for all. The mission was clear, and it was their best chance at ending the war. With the Xylar control of Earth slipping from their grasp, they would hit them where it hurt the most. Maya laid out the plan. The human resistance would launch a full-scale attack on the remaining Xylar strongholds across Earth and space. They would target the key infrastructure that the Xylar relied on for their war effort. They would use everything at their disposal to ensure that the Xylar would no longer be able to coordinate their forces, no longer able to wage war against humanity as a unified threat. The strategy was dangerous. It meant putting everything they had on the line, and attacking where the Xylar were the most concentrated. It meant risking the lives of their best soldiers and commanders. But Maya had seen the strength in the human spirit. She had seen how far they could push themselves when they were backed into a corner. As the resistance forces mobilized, the world watched in awe. The people of Earth had not given up. They had not allowed themselves to be cowed by the alien invaders. They were fighting back with everything they had, and they were determined to win. Maya stood at the forefront of that fight, her voice strong as she rallied her forces. They would not go quietly into the night. They would take the fight to the Xylar, and they would show them what humanity was capable of. The battle was set to begin on a scale unlike anything they had ever seen before. As the resistance gathered their forces and made their way toward the heart of the Xylar war machine, Maya knew this would be the pivotal moment of the war, the one that would decide whether humanity would survive or fall to the invaders who had underestimated them every step of the way. The war was about to enter its final stage, and the stakes had never been higher. The human forces moved swiftly into position. The tension was palpable across every command center. Every soldier knew the stakes. Every pilot knew the risks. This would be their last chance to strike a decisive blow, and they couldn't afford to fail. Every moment felt like it could be their last. But despite the fear and uncertainty, there was a sense of unity that had never existed before. Humans from all walks of life had come together in the fight for their world. No matter their differences, no matter their past, this was a war for survival. Maya stood in the front lines watching as the troops prepared for the assault. She knew that this would be the hardest battle they had ever fought. Their forces were outnumbered and outgunned, but their determination was stronger than ever before. They had already taken back several cities, but now they were about to launch the final assault on the Xylar's remaining strongholds. The plan was bold and reckless, but it was their only hope. They would strike at the heart of the Xylar's command structure, a place where their final defenses were located. If they could take that out, the Xylar's ability to fight back would be crippled. They would be forced into retreat, and for the first time since the invasion began, the humans would have the upper hand. As the resistance forces launched their attack, the Xylar responded with all the fury they could muster. Their ships swarmed the human fleet with firepower that could decimate entire armies. But the humans were not intimidated. They fought with everything they had, using every tactic they had learned over the course of the war. They moved with precision and speed. The Xylar were strong, but the humans were relentless. Maya led a small group of elite soldiers into the heart of the Xylar stronghold. They infiltrated the heavily fortified area with incredible speed and skill. The Xylar never saw them coming. Their forces were distracted by the larger battle taking place above the planet's surface, and that was exactly what the humans needed. The team fought through waves of Xylar soldiers, but they pushed forward undeterred. Their mission was clear: destroy the heart of the enemy's command structure and cripple their ability to fight back. They encountered resistance at every turn, but their drive never wavered. They knew that failure was not an option. They had come too far and sacrificed too much to turn back now. The countdown began as they reached the central command room. Maya could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on her. This was it. This was the point of no return. They had no backup. They had no reinforcements. If they failed, the war would be lost, and humanity's last chance for survival would slip away. Inside the control room, the humans planted the final explosives and hacked into the Xylar's systems, uploading a virus that would destroy their final line of defense. It was a gamble, but it was their only choice. Once the virus was in place, they would trigger the detonation, and with the explosion, the Xylar's grip on Earth would finally be broken. The room shook as the bomb was activated, and the countdown began. Maya held her breath as they made their way back to the escape route. The walls around them were closing and the Xylar were on their tail, but the human forces were already beginning to retreat. They had done their part. Now all they had to do was survive. The countdown reached its final moments, and as the detonation blast rocked the building, Maya felt a surge of hope rising within her. They had done it. They had struck at the heart of the Xylar Empire, and in doing so had given humanity the chance to win the war. But the fight wasn't over yet, and they had to live long enough to see their victory through. The shockwave from the explosion reverberated through the heart of the Xylar stronghold. The blast tore through their defenses like a tidal wave crashing against a fragile dam. The entire structure trembled under the force of the impact, and the lights flickered as systems began to fail one by one. In the distance, Maya could hear the deafening sounds of Xylar ships falling from the sky. As their once mighty fleet was thrown into disarray, their communications scrambled, their coordination completely shattered. Maya's team sprinted through the crumbling corridors as the building around them collapsed under the force of the explosion. The sound of alarms filled the air, a cacophony of chaos as the Xylar scrambled to react, but it was too late. The heart of their empire had been struck, and their ability to maintain any semblance of control was slipping away with every passing second. The escape route was a maze of corridors leading them further into the bowels of the facility, but Maya and her team pushed on undeterred. They knew they had to get out alive to ensure that the victory they had just secured would not be in vain. Behind them, the sounds of alien soldiers closing in grew louder, but the humans had learned how to fight with the knowledge that survival was never guaranteed. Their determination drove them forward even as the weight of the war pressed down on their shoulders. As they neared the final exit, a massive tremor shook the ground beneath them. The entire complex seemed to be buckling under the strain of the destruction they had caused. Maya turned to her team, each of them breathless but resolute. She gave the order to push through, and together they sprinted toward the final stretch, the last hurdle between them and freedom. Outside, the battle raged on above the planet's surface as human forces took advantage of the chaos caused by the Xylar's breakdown. The resistance pressed forward in a final push to drive the invaders off Earth once and for all. The Xylar were in full retreat, their forces scattered and disorganized, with no central command to guide them. Their ships were easy targets for the human fighters who had spent the last months perfecting their tactics. In the distance, the unmistakable sight of their transport ship came into view. The human team made it to the extraction point just as the first wave of Xylar soldiers broke through the facility's defenses, but they were too late. Maya's team was already on board, and their ship's engines roared to life. Just as the last of the Xylar defenses fell silent, the humans had done it. They had broken the Xylar's hold on Earth. As they ascended into the sky, Maya looked out over the planet below. The cities were still scared by the war, but the smoke was starting to clear for the first time in months. The world seemed still peaceful. The victory was not without cost. Countless lives had been lost in the battle, but the humans had shown what they were truly capable of, and in doing so they had proven that they could never be conquered. The war wasn't over yet, but that Xylar had been dealt a blow from which they would never recover. Maya knew there would be challenges ahead. Rebuilding Earth would take time, but humanity had the strength and the will to rise from the ashes and forge a future of their own. It had been a long road, but the victory was theirs, and now they would rebuild together, stronger than ever. The fight for Earth had been won, but the battle for humanity's place in the universe had just begun.